I want to address a question that I received via email. And it's from a parent whose son was recently diagnosed with high-functioning autism. And she's basically wanting to understand why he acts the way he does. She's trying to get inside of his head, so to speak, so she can understand how he thinks and why he has certain attitudes, because she thinks that this will help her with helping him with his behavior, which she's right. If you can get inside the head of a child with high-functioning autism, or HFA, and understand his behavior, then it's easier to deal with behavioral problems. So understanding your son is going to involve, first of all, knowing the characteristics associated with high-functioning autism. And we won't go into that here. You can research that online. Just go to myaspergerschild.com and type in traits for high-functioning autism, and you'll get a good list there. So we want to look at how the child with high-functioning autism thinks, what matters to this child, why do they react to certain things, and why they behave the way that they do. And so the first thing we want to look at is understanding how the world works. Okay? Your child with high-functioning autism does not understand how the world works. He has as you know, a neurocognitive disorder that affects many areas of functioning. Difficulty with basic understanding of the rules of society, especially if they're not obvious. And life has many of these rules. Some of them are written, some are spoken, some are learned through observation and intuition. So your son only knows what has been directly taught to him through books, movies, TV shows, the internet, and so forth. So he's not able to sit in a room and observe what is happening, and therefore then by watching people and how they look and how they move, understand their social cues. He's not going to be able to understand implied directions or how to read between the lines. He just does not learn how to do things that way. Instead, he learns facts. Okay? He does not take in what is happening around him that involves the rest of the world, only what directly impacts him. So when you're trying to make sense of the behavior of a HFA child, just understand that he's trying to make sense of how the world works. Many of the conversations he has had, your son has had, have probably been about knowledge and facts, not about feelings, opinions, or interactions between people. So as a result, he doesn't really know how the world works and what you're supposed to do in various situations. And this can apply to even the smallest situations you might take for granted. When you don't know the unspoken rules of situations, that causes a lot of anxiety. So if your child is like most HFA children, he probably also has more than his fair share of anxiety. And this leads to a lot of the behavioral issues that you may be having with him. Your son is trying to impose his own sense of order on the world that he doesn't understand, and sometimes that looks to the parent like behavior problems. The HFA child creates his own set of rules for everyday functioning in order to keep things from changing, and that also helps minimize his anxiety. Sometimes he just makes up the rules when it's convenient, and other times he attempts to make them up by looking for patterns or rules or the logic of a situation in order to make it less chaotic for him and more predictable and understandable. If there are no rules for an event or situation, he probably will create some rules from his own experiences based on what he has read, seen, or heard. He'll often have a great deal of information to use in reaching his conclusions and forming his opinions and feelings. As a result, some of his conclusions are correct and some are wrong. The HFA child will rarely consider someone else's point of view if he doesn't consider this person to be an expert. And the fewer people he sees as experts, the more behavioral difficulty you will see as a parent. Now, he might consider teachers and others to be experts, but his mother or father will rarely be seen as an expert. As a result, he will argue with you about your opinions if they're different from his. He will think that his opinion is as good as yours, so he will choose his opinion, and this represents his rigid thinking. He finds it difficult to be flexible and to consider alternate views, especially if he's already reached a conclusion. So for the HFA child, new ideas can be very difficult to accept. He may be having the thought, for example, I'd rather do it the way I've always done it because I'm most comfortable with that. Being forced to think differently will cause a lot of anxiety in this child. In trying to understand how the world works, your son tries to make sense of your explanations, but sometimes he's not able to do that. So as a result, your effort at intervening or trying to change his problematic behavior or trying to reason with him, all of these things may fall short. And this can occur because your explanation has no meaning to him. The HFA child can only understand things for which they have a frame of reference, meaning they have a picture or idea about a particular situation from other sources. So I guess the last thing I want to say is never overestimate your child's understanding of a situation just because he has high intellectual ability or has other strengths. You know, the HFA child, after all, is high functioning, and he's probably very intelligent, but just because he's very intelligent in certain areas and has certain strengths does not mean that he is going to be able to fully comprehend the ins and outs of certain social situations. He's a boy who needs to figure out how the world works, and he needs a roadmap and a set of instructions, one example at a time. So I hope that that makes sense, and if you have any further questions about this, feel free to email me. My email is mbhutton@gmail.com, and if any of you would like to use me as your personal parent coach, just click on the link below the video. Thanks. This is Mark Hutten. We'll talk to you again soon.